32nd day of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine. The Russian military launched a missile strike on the oil depot of the western Ukrainian city of Lutsk.
Попередньо жертв немає. За інформацією військових, ракета була випущена зі сторони Республіки Білорусь.
On March the 27th, air raids were heard throughout Ukraine, said Mikhailo Podolyak, the advisor to the head of the president's office. Again, total missile strikes at Lutsk, Kharkiv, Zhytomyr, Rivne, every day more and more rockets. Mariupol under carpet bombing. No longer has a language, humanism, civilization. Only rockets, bombs, and attempts to wipe it off from the face of the earth. Does Europe really like it? 7 people died in the village of Oskil, Kharkiv region. Also, the day before, on March the 26th, Russia fired a record number of missiles at a time, 70 missiles. Most of them were fired from Russian ships in the Black Sea and were taken down by the Ukrainian air defense. However, the hit of the oil depots in Lviv and Dubno completely destroyed them. The Russian military fired with heavy artillery at a camera crew of the British TV channel Sky News near Chernobyl.
The shelling is very close.
A correspondent, Alex Crawford, and her colleagues became a living target while trying to cross the bridge used by civilians, rescuers, medics, and volunteers to transport the humanitarian aid to Chernobyl. Fortunately, they managed to escape. Other civilians also fled under fire. A man named Yuri was wounded with shrapnel. The crew provided first aid to him. Alex Crawford has been covering news about the events in Ukraine since the first day of the war. As an international correspondent, she has worked in many hotspots around the world. But she says she has never seen such cruelties against civilians before. The city of Chernihiv is now completely surrounded by the enemy. The only road bridge to the city was bombed by the invaders. Due to the fact that Russists are constantly shelling the green corridors, 130,000 residents have literally become hostages, says the head of the Chernihiv region, Vyacheslav Chaus.
Чернігівці, тримайтесь. Ми робимо все, що потрібно для того, щоб в місті були їжа і ліки.
The mayor of Ivano-Frankivsk went to Chernihiv with humanitarian aid but could not get to the city. The occupiers fired on his car and turned it into a sieve.
Слава Богу, всі живі. Є декілька наших хлопців, які є поранені.
Chernihiv, that restrained the occupiers' attack on Kyiv from the north, has been turned into ruins. And what is left of the ancient city, rescuers are trying to clean from deadly shells that did not explode. Europe's nuclear security is under threat, Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine Irina Vereshchuk said. The occupiers continue to militarize the Chernobyl exclusion zone. This poses a very serious risk of damaging the insulation structures built over the station's fourth unit after its explosion in 1986. Such damage will inevitably lead to the emission of a significant amount of radioactive dust into the atmosphere. It will contaminate not only Ukraine's territory but also other European countries. The occupiers' military equipment and dozens of tons of enemy missiles and mortar ammunition are located in a short distance from the station itself. And they can detonate at any time. That is why Ukraine is demanding that the UN Security Council establish a special mission to prevent an environmental catastrophe. Shots and tear gas against civilians. The occupiers tried to scare and disperse a peaceful protest of Kherson residents, who again went to the main square of the city to say, A woman was injured during the protests on March the 27th. Kherson is a temporarily occupied city in the south of Ukraine. The Russian military are suppressing any protests there, threatening and kidnapping people. However, for several days in a row, Kherson residents, along with civilians in other cities in southern Ukraine, have been showing their courage and fighting the occupiers without weapons. For 32 days in a row, Russian occupiers have been ruthlessly shelling the city of Mariupol. 40% of buildings cannot be restored. They were destroyed by a direct hit with Grad, howitzers and flamethrowers. The city has turned into a cemetery, without water and communication. Those who could not get out of occupied Mariupol are in a complete informational vacuum and do not understand what is happening in the city. Mariupol residents trying to escape can pay with their lives for their attempt. Like 11-year-old Milena. On March the 16th, she and her mother, sister and grandmother tried to leave the besieged city. Their car was stopped by the occupiers and they opened fire. The girl was shot directly in the face. A bullet went through her jaw and injured her tongue. Now, the little athlete barely speaks and hardly walks. Fortunately, the Russian killers allowed the wounded girl to be taken to the hospital in Zaporizhia, and this saved her life. The occupiers continue to block humanitarian corridors, making it impossible to evacuate even wounded children. Some of them were taken prisoners by the invaders.
По нашим данным, более 2000 детей вывезено, а это украдено, значит, потому что их неизвестны нам точные локации всех этих детей. Держат их как за души для обменного фонда.
In addition, 143 young Ukrainians have already died during Russia's bloody full-scale war against Ukraine.
Where can you find a safe place if your city is under siege? Is it an usual residential building? No. In hospitals or schools?
Третья больница, Мариуполь. Роддом.
No. In a theater, the heart of your city. Far away from any military objects. Yes, that's a good idea. Is there any other way we could warn Russian pilots about kids hiding in the theater? Yes, capital letters, in Russian. That way we will definitely be safe. But only if murdering our children isn't their goal.